Hi there. So I've had some requests to share how it is that I dome copper pieces prior to the enameling process. So I just want to go ahead and share that with you. So one thing we know is when pieces are about something a bit smaller and more of a normal shape, like an oval shape, you can take a dapping block and use the largest size and just give it a form like that. Also, like a wooden stump, you can just hammer it out a bit. And these are with the smaller regular size shapes. And then when you have things that are a bit different shape, I'm going to show you, or larger, that wouldn't fit into a dapping block. And if you don't have a wooden stump available, I'm just going to show you how I do it very basically. This pertains really well to shapes that aren't necessarily circular, and also I've had like larger pieces that I have bumped out the shape, and this is the exact process that I use for that. So I'm going to show you that now. First of all, you'll take a piece of copper, and the pieces that I usually dome are not thicker than, this is 22 gauge copper. Really, when I'm using 20 and 18 gauge, those can withhold the strength a bit, so they don't necessarily need to be domed, but it's helpful if you're using a thinner gauge of metal for your piece. In terms of it being a larger piece, so you want it to be lighter, you definitely need to dome that out. And so what I'm going to show you is a phone book works great, and phone books aren't as readily available any longer. So what you need to do is find a book that's thick enough, and I tend to use this book. And I have my piece of copper. It is 22 gauge, and it has been annealed really well, pickled, and I've cleaned it off. So I use this, and then I will grab my dapping parts, and I usually start with kind of a larger size because I don't want a smaller one really digging it in. What I'm going to be doing is just starting to make circular motions with this, and it's almost just like burnishing the piece. So I just start out with circles. And if your piece is square or a different shape, really what you're going to be trying to do is, I'm going to leave about like 1/4 of an inch on the edges, but I'm pretty much going to want to burnish this entire piece. And you also need to be aware that this can really move the metal, but maybe if I just want a very slight dome, this is just what I would do. The more of a dome you want, just the longer you would do this, and maybe even harder. But as you can see, it's starting to take a shape already. I don't want it can get a bit warped like that. So even sometimes I'll just go back and forth. But I'm really trying to burnish that entire center area. I'm putting quite a bit of pressure on it, and as you can see, it is definitely getting pretty warped, but we can straighten that out. So really at this point, you can see that it's doing more shape in this curvature than in the longer one. It's starting to look like a taco shell. So the way that I correct that is I just start putting pressure to on each side, and now I kind of want to push them out. What I'll do now is take a burnishing tool, and I'm just gonna go now around these edges that I left kind of a 1/4 of an inch edge all around, and I'm gonna use this tool to really kind of like shape the edge, and kind of I'm lifting up a little bit, like if you can see I'm kind of holding it at an angle like this as I burnish around this edge. If I want to create more of, if I want to bump it out even more, you just go back in and kind of just keep on going with the same process. Even just starting, I took like a smaller one and really focusing on the center. But you can see all of the way it's being burnished. And then if I'm feeling, so yeah, this is really just the technique, and you're kind of need to like play around with it a bit to get the, you know, the type of dome that you want. But just a subtle dome is totally fine. The next thing I would do is take you want some kind of very flat metal surface that's hard. And what I'll do is, even I could do this a bit more, this burnishing on the outer, that outer ring. But what I'm gonna, the point of using this flat steel surface is so that now I can make it so that this piece lays flat, so it doesn't have like a unevenness to it. And now I can go around kind of pressing down, and I'll use the burnisher to burnish these edges flat to this steel block. If you need to anneal it again, because it's been worked hardened, it's totally fine to do that at this point. But this is just the technique that I use that's super minimal, minimal amount of tools. So really just a thick book, some dapping tools, and a burnisher. And there you can see it's pretty much flat to that top now. And you can kind of just adjust and play around with it as you need, but that's a completely, there's a domed piece and it lays flat. You could just clean it off, but I would start enameling the counter enamel at this point, and with the burnishing it even cleaned it more, so it's actually fine to just start enameling. Alright, I hope that explains how to dome a larger piece of copper.